Welcome to Season 5 of Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I'm your host, Randi Roberts, Executive and Career Life Coach. This season, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood capabilities in leadership, courage. Not the dramatic kind, but the everyday courage to step into discomfort, speak up when it matters, make hard calls, and lead forward even when the path isn't clear. You'll hear from executives and coaches sharing real moments that tested them and shaped their careers. My hope is that each conversation invites you to reflect on your own relationship with courage, where it's serving you, and where a braver step may be just ahead. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Fulfilling Career Happy Life podcast. I am very happy to introduce my guest for today, Teresa Rand. Teresa and I have known each other as colleagues sort of in our distant orbits for a few years as we both run somewhat similar businesses. And like me, Teresa had a first act. She held leadership roles in the business world and now runs Rand Consulting. And she does a lot of speaking. She does a lot of training, working with companies and individuals on career coaching. I even hear there's a book in the works, so I'm excited to read that later this year. And she also is the leader of the Boss Lady community and the Boss Lady podcast. So in that work, she focuses on women's empowerment, gender equality, and generally women's issues in terms of leadership in the business world. So again, there's a lot of crossover in the work that she and I do, and I was really excited to have Teresa on the show. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited. It's good to see you and catch up.
Yeah.
It's been a little while. I know we've had some clients that we've sent between each other, so it was nice to catch up with someone that does what I do and understands the positives, the ins, the outs, all the things,
Yeah.
right? So
Same.
excited to be here today,
Yeah,
Randy.
and I feel the same. Very well said. And for anyone who's watching this on YouTube, we did not have conversation about wardrobe. It's just
I,
coincidence that we're
that's
dressed
so true.
identically.
So true. We are. Same
Yeah.
sweater, same color concept, the whole bit. So perfect.
Okay. So to dive in, our this theme this season is around leadership courage because it's coming up so often in the clients that I work with, both leadership teams, but also in individuals. And so let me start by asking you, Teresa, are you seeing this theme as well? How often is the discussion of courage or maybe the lack of it coming up in the work that you do?
You know, it's interesting because when you and I first started chatting about this, when you start talking about something, you tend to see it more, right? Or hear it more about
Absolutely.
the conversation. And I had a young woman call me recently, and she wanted to talk about confidence. But what the conversation really ended up being about was courage. She had the skills, the knowledge. She was fearful of speaking up and being very confident about her thought. She happens to be in HR, so she wanted to give the CEO the reasons we do this, and we don't do that, and that. And she was saying, I don't feel comfortable speaking up. And that's more about courage than confidence, I think. And she has a great leader. I know her leader, so there's no fear of retaliation or any of that. It was her own lack of being courageous enough to know that what she has to say is valuable.
Yeah.
So
I'm
it
really glad
reminded
you
me of the topic we were covering today.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because the way I've thought a lot about this in confidence versus courage, and I feel sort of a guideline I have or definition I've come up with is confidence can move you ahead when things are certain,
Hmm.
and courage is required to just to get you to take that move maybe when they're not certain.
Yeah,
I don't know if
great.
that resonates
I
for
like
you.
that. It does. It absolutely does. Because again, in preparing for this, I'm thinking about times I've used courage, and I laugh and say, I didn't realize I was being courageous. I just did what I thought I needed to do. And then after the fact, I'm going, oh, that could have went either way.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes that's good. You just move forward, right? Without really a lot of thought. Not highly recommended, but sometimes it does work. And you're right, it's the courage to change something. is how I often look, especially when I'm going back in my career. It was to change something I wanted to change within my career or life, but primarily career at this point. And what did I have to do to make that happen? And it didn't always feel like it was the best. It might have felt like the best thing for me, but maybe not the best thing for the organization I was with at the time.
Interesting. Does an example come to mind that you experienced in your own career?
Yeah, I remember the very first time. I was only like 5 or 6 years into my career. I worked for the YMCA, same organization, 30 years, but I moved 3 times. So I've been different cities, different states, different roles. And I was young in my career. And I remember deciding that I wanted to move up. I knew by year 5, 6 that I loved working in this field and that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be a CEO. Well, 5 years in, I wasn't going to be the CEO, but I wanted to follow that trajectory. And I knew I needed to move. I was in a very small town, a
Mm.
small Y. And I remember getting the courage to tell my boss that I had decided this was the career for me and I wanted him to help me move to a bigger Y. And I remember being very afraid to tell him that he would either say, well, have at it. I'm going to go ahead and worry about replacing you because I can't operate in the unknown.
Yeah.
But to his credit, he didn't. He helped me. He helped me get the credentials I needed. He helped me make the contacts I needed. Now, it was an additional 5 years before I ever moved and got that next position that I wanted. But that was a big risk for me.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine because there was so much at stake in terms of your
Right.
current role. Were you going to be successful with that? What do you think enabled you to take that courageous step and then follow through on it?
Again, I have to say again, it took 5 years from the time I put it out to the time it actually happened. And during that 5 years, there was a lot of fear. And what actually happened, Randy, is I had to quit the job with the Y I had and move to the city and state that had the Y that I wanted to work for
Wow.
because I kept trying to apply and long story, just kept getting, thank you for applying letters. And I happened to go to a workshop that the COO of that Y was teaching at. And I befriended her. We were both runners at the time. So that whole week we were at the conference. We ran every day and we actually became friends. And so I finally had a contact that I could say, I want to come work for your Y. And she helped me get the job.
I, that Thank you for sharing that example because it's very often that I have a conversation with clients and others about the importance of your network and
Yeah, oh yeah.
using your network and being courageous about asking for what you need. And in your case, you actually built that network.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I knew the city and state I wanted to go to because my mother lived in that city and state. I had 3 small children as a single mom, so I wanted to get closer to my mom. So I specifically and intentionally would go to trainings that location would put on to meet people to do that. And fast forward, Penny is her name, and 30 years later, we're still very good friends. Very good
Yeah.
friends.
So I would put that in the category of strategic stalking.
That's right. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. She would like that. That's exactly. And we just happened to like each other. So that was a bonus,
Yeah,
right? That was a
absolutely.
bonus.
Yeah,
That was a
absolutely.
bonus.
Thinking about courage and the clients that you work with, whether it's in a company setting or individuals, is there, what would you say are the most common courage blockers that you see?
Fear of the what if.
Ooh, say more.
We play that game all the time. What if? What if they get mad? What if they fire me? What if they don't like? What if they retaliate? 99% of the time, they don't do that.
Mhm.
If you are being intentional and respectful and keeping it about your wants, desires, and the things you want to have happen that will be good for the organization. It can't just be me, me, me. You've got to, you got to play the role of, if I can do this, I can be a better alliance for the organization, a better asset, a better team member, whatever. Or quite frankly, these are my goals. When I hear people say, I don't think I'm being recognized, I don't think I'm in the pipeline to be promoted, the first question I always ask is, have you asked somebody? Have you told the powers to be what your goals and wants are? We can't just sit back and wait to be picked, because that's just usually not how it works. You have to put yourself in those spaces.
That's very, very important. And I am a huge advocate for advocating for yourself and asking for what you want. You kind of need to be prepared to hear no, because otherwise it's an ultimatum.
Absolutely.
But nobody can do that for you as well as you can do that for yourself. I think that's really, really important. I'm glad you're mentioning that.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think if we understand, and I like what you said, be prepared to hear no, and be prepared that it might be a maybe, but not today. Like I said, from the time I wanted to move to the time I moved was 5 years. I had stuff I needed to do to prepare for that next step. Thankfully, I had someone who was very helpful in that arena, and my boss and my relationships that I had cultivated, but I had to do the work. I can't just say, I'm next in line. I have worked with organizations where they promote the next in line. That often doesn't work.
I agree. I agree.
It's a conversation, and conversations often take courage, especially when one person is in a seat of power over us. That takes an extra level of courage.
It does. It's interesting because what you're saying brings to mind a dynamic that, like, I've seen the data on gender differences here and how women approach this and how men approach this. And I coach both women and men
Hmm.
in the companies that I work with and my one-on-one clients. And it's interesting because there definitely is a dynamic of
Hmm.
women holding back until they're 100%
A
qualified.
hundred
They
percent.
meet every qualification on the job description. Whereas men in general tend to be bolder. If they
Right,
meet half the qualifications, they're willing to go for it. And
right.
I have that conversation a lot of ask for what you want, put yourself out there.
Absolutely. And we actually just have some recent research to back up a little bit of what you're saying. You may have already gotten and read the 2025 McKinsey report on women in the workplace.
Yeah, I just saw it.
And one of the things that they talk about is how women speak up and when they speak up. And what I found very interesting is that below middle management, they don't speak up very much. Once they get above middle management to senior or C-suite, they start speaking up. And the interesting thing is why? Because you feel safer. You feel like you're already in the room. So I get it, as a young employee, you might not be as comfortable speaking up. You might not feel as courageous as you do once you're in a senior leadership position. But I like to say those of us in a senior leadership position ought to pick out those that are not and ask their opinion. Sometimes that's all they need to take that leap of courage and faith, is for you to ask them what they think.
It's a great point because those of us in leadership roles can influence this whole
Right,
process. And
right.
it kind of makes me wonder if people are really holding back to speak up until they get that seat. My gosh, how much more quickly could they have gotten that seat had they spoken
Had
up?
they said. Exactly. Exactly. I
You know,
had an example literally yesterday. A company I'm working with, the one of the key members, director of her department, just quit, went to work for another company, a lot more money, flexibility, all the things. So it wasn't that, they could have helped her with money because it wasn't a match, but she was a really good employee. But when she left, She fired off a letter to the HR director of all the other things wrong with her position.
Wow.
And the CEO, who she reported to, had no idea. She thought this person was happy, this person was there to stay, this person was doing great work. And come to find out, there were all these things that were happening, and her perception, the employee, was that she was not happy, but she never told anybody. She never said a word until she was out the door. And I'm sorry, she may be in a job that's going to pay, $50,000 more, but if that's the pattern,
Yeah.
it doesn't vote. You have to learn to ask for what you want.
Yeah, I agree. Likewise, hopefully people are asking other people,
Right,
valued talent, what is their
right,
experience and opening that door in that way.
right.
It'll be interesting for you to watch her career and see if she handles
Absolutely.
situations differently next time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Because she had a general manager CEO that could be talked to and thought she was asking all the right questions and had a good relationship, but for whatever reason, and it was a young woman, it just did not feel comfortable speaking up. Now, kudos to the CEO because she called and said, I want you to read this letter and tell me what I could have done differently. As opposed to, well, she's just wrong and she's just a millennial or she's just a, fill in the blank. She's saying, no, there's got to be something in here that I might could have done differently. So,
Yeah, I agree with you.
great
Kudos
leader.
to that person because
Right.
especially when someone leaves, it's easy to write them off, but
Whatever. Yeah.
you're missing an opportunity for
Right.
sure.
Right.
So, Teresa, when you're working with a client who needs to summon courage, where do you often start with them? What ideas do you have about that?
I go back, I do, and Randy, I know you know this, but for the listeners, I do a lot of personality profiling. And so that's one of the first things I do with my clients, which can often tell me a lot about how they speak up, when they speak up, what they need to speak up, all those type of things. Do they need a lot of detail or they just speak up off the cuff, which I don't recommend, all those things. So we go through that and I ask them to give me examples of when they have or have not courageously spoken up about something. It could be a childhood example of, you know, going out to recess and a bully, standing up to a bully or not standing up to a bully, whatever. But through that, we're able to pick and choose how could that have played out differently? What was the fear? What were the thought? Usually it's the thoughts in our head that keep us from being courageous. It's all those things. I call it the committee in my head tells us you're not smart enough. Nobody cares. You're not good enough. You don't have the value. They don't want to hear what you've got to say. And if they start down that road, I ask them to give me a specific example of when someone has said those things to you. 99.9%, they're like, nobody's ever told me what I said was not valuable. Nobody's ever told me they didn't want to hear what I thought. No, just you, just you.
Yeah. That's a really powerful question because we say things to ourselves we would never say to someone else. We wouldn't think
Absolutely.
about someone else.
Right. We're
Yeah.
our worst enemy listening to
Yeah.
those voices in our head.
Yeah.
And I don't recommend just blurting things out. I think you need to be intentional about what you want and what you're going to say. And sometimes it's as simple as practice it with someone. I have this
Yeah.
meeting coming up, and here's what I want to get out of the meeting. I had a lady call me right, a couple of months ago. She's a brand new CEO, and she said, I'm going into my one on one with this new CEO, and I want to set the tone so that it's a little different from the relationship I had with the last CEO. I want her to see me as more valuable. I don't think the last CEO really understood all that I bring to the table because I never voiced what I thought and what I was capable of. I want to start off this time doing that. So we role played, we practiced. Practice what you're going to say.
Yeah.
And her outcome after the meeting, she actually, I have it up over here on my desk, sent me a beautiful thank you note that she spoke up and she felt good and it was well received. It was respectful, because again, as women, like you said, we want to apply for the job unless we're 80 to 100% sure we have all the qualifications. It's the same with speaking up. We won't speak up for the same reasons. We don't think what we have to say is valuable.
That's a really powerful example. And I give this person a whole lot of credit for taking this as an opportunity. Sometimes getting a new boss can be a really hard
Yeah,
thing. So
absolutely.
much can change, so much is out of our
Right,
control. But what I heard you say is she really did some exploration on what could she do
right,
differently? How can she contribute to the greatest
right.
degree and set that up for
Absolutely.
herself? That's terrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might still be in early days, but how is it playing out for her?
Really well. I saw her last week at an event, and she actually used a little bit of that story. We were doing introductions and talking about our careers through the decades, from 20s to 30s, 40s on up with the ages in the room. And she gave that example about what she wants now. She's in her 50s versus what she wanted when she was 30. And it's not the same, but really taking time to understand that, um, and being willing to, maybe it's not that you want more, maybe you want less. You need to say that too.
Yeah, that it's so important to think about what is right for you in this season of your life because you
Right,
might still be working on an old playbook.
right.
And I mean, you and I are both good examples of that. We're in second careers.
Absolutely.
That, for me anyway, completely fits what I want in my life
Yeah.
now.
Yep. And I say it all the time. And I said it when you and I were catching up. I've got the business that I want so that I am not working 100 hours a week. I've got 8 grandchildren. That's my priority. So I try to keep Mondays and Fridays free, try to push my clients into 3 days. Doesn't always work, but for the most part, it does, so that I can have some long weekends to do things with my kids or grandchildren and my kids, but mostly my grandchildren. Little faux pas there.
That's okay. They're
And
probably not listening.
yeah, right, exactly. And they wouldn't be surprised if they were. Um, but I also have to be able to articulate that and set my own boundaries. Setting boundaries is one of the most courageous things you can do. I don't care where you are in your career. What are your boundaries?
Say a little bit more about that.
If you are very specific with your boundaries, and they have to be realistic. If you're trying to grow in your career, you may have to work a little more. You may have to take on more roles, more volunteer, those type of things, depending on what you want. But you also set the boundaries of how available you are, how flexible you can be, you know, and if you set some of those boundaries and they're met with pushback, that may be telling you something too. You may not be in the job that you want. Like you said, if you get told no or maybe, or I don't think you're fit for that role, listen, you got choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't quit. As my mother always said, don't quit one job till you have another, but you can certainly start planning for that other job, right?
Yeah.
If what you're doing is not fitting. So often we think our fear of speaking up and being courageous keeps us stuck. And we don't have to be stuck. There
Yeah.
are opportunities, there are other things we can do.
Yeah. You may just have to pick up your head and start asking some questions and figuring out what that is. But yeah,
Right.
I think that kind of introspection is really important and paying attention to if something's not fitting the way it did, if it's not energizing you the way it used to,
Uh-huh.
it's a good time to start asking some of those questions.
Absolutely.
What could
Yeah.
bring that back?
Yeah. And I know I was 30 years with a Y, and those last couple of years, I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Tired of raising money. I just don't have the energy and the desire that I had, or not the energy, but the passion. And I hired a coach and worked with her for 9 months until finally I was able to write that letter and say, I'm out. I'm going to give you a year and then I'm out.
Yeah.
and it worked out. That's been 9 years ago now, so that I've been doing the consulting, and it's worked out. But it was definitely a leap of courage, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But it occurs to me, I've had similar situations, and what I realized was what enabled me to have courage was to be very clear on what's true for me.
Mm,
This is what I need to get what I want out of my life, to see, what I
right.
want my life to look and feel like, and assessing the risk, but then just staying true to what I needed.
Right. I use an analogy, and I'm not that creative, so it's actually called Rand, the Rand exercise, which is my last name. And it's figuring out what is your current reality and what do you want to change about it. That's the first step. And that's what you just said. Where am I now? And what do I want to change? What actions do I need to take to make those changes? What do I need to make those changes? Do I need more education? Do I need more money? Do I need a certification? Do I need somebody to support me? What do I need to get to that next reality? And what's my desired outcome? When we sit down and we write those four things out and just throw it at the wall, put it all down without judgment, we come out with some pretty powerful action items.
That's such an interesting framework for people to follow if they're thinking about, taking a courageous act.
Right.
Is that difficult for people like to sit down and think that through, or is that just an easy thing for most people to do?
I had a client last year I worked with for about 4 months. And when I gave her the Rand exercise, she texted me one day and she said, I just didn't know this was going to be this hard.
Yeah,
I said, I never said it was going to be easy. We have to sit down and really get honest with ourselves. What are we going to have courage about if we don't even know where do we want to go? And where are the pain points that we're going to have to step up and be courageous? Where are they? We don't know. But to take the courage and go out and say, I want this promotion when you know you don't have the education for it or the certification is not being realistic. You got to do
right.
your own internal work before you can step out there.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that that's a double-edged sword. I think looking at what you have, what you need is really important. And it's one of the things you can control. Um, on the other hand, you can't always let that stop you because I've seen a lot of people that
I,
they think they need a certification. It's like, wait a minute, you have the skills. Is that
right.
something you really need, or is that you getting ready to be ready?
That is such a great point because we can do ourselves a disservice. You're absolutely right. And that too will come out through these reflection moments, but it comes out with taking the courage to ask.
Yeah.
And we go back to where women don't even apply, as opposed to saying, look, I know I don't have this and this, but here's what I do have. And I think that translates into this. We got to have the courage to at least put ourselves out there.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add to that is if you're having that thought, anybody who's listening, if you're having that thought, am I ready? Do I need this? Get out of your own head and talk to somebody about it. A coach
Yep.
is one way to do it, but you may have a mentor, you may have a partner,
Right.
somebody that you work with that you really trust. We can't, I have a friend who said this, another coach who said this to me recently. You can't read the label from inside the bottle.
Oh, wow.
So you got to get
Yeah.
out of your
Got to
own
get out of it.
head and get
Yeah.
some perspective and talk to somebody else. Because
Yeah.
even if you're just processing it out loud, it really unlocks something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I wrote down a couple of things. We talked about practice speaking up, don't let your fear keep you stuck. And this last one is, I think, probably should be the first one, and it's know your worth. So often we hear know your worth means what prices am I going to charge? What salary am I going to want? And yes, that's part of knowing your worth and a whole nother podcast. But knowing your worth and your value in yourself, your opinions, your abilities will help give you the courage when you might have feel a little queasy in your stomach before you speak up.
Yeah.
Know that what you have to say is valuable and it brings something to the table.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a great place for us to wrap this up. Teresa, if you could share with our listeners where they can follow you, find out more about you, hear more of what you have to say.
Well, it's pretty easy. Again, I don't get terribly creative. It's my name, teresarand.com. And it's Teresa without an H, I always say. Teresa, Rand, RAND.com. And from there you can find everything else. And I'm on
Okay.
LinkedIn, all the usual places.
Okay.
LinkedIn, Instagram, all the things.
Great.
Facebook, so it's just Teresa Rand Consulting. Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you.
Sounds good. Absolutely. Thanks so much for being here. I knew this would be a really thought-provoking conversation, and as always, you brought it.
Good, good. It's easy to talk to you. We have so much in common. I
Yeah.
always enjoy visiting with you.
Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.